Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming for one more press conference of today. A couple of reminders to you guys. We're going to be very, very restrict. No pictures being taken from the front row. Please move to the side and please leave some space for the volunteers. Please switch the flashes off. And you guys, when you're asking your questions, please stand up and then sit down straight after you ask your question. I would like to welcome on stage the panelists for the press conference of The Private Lives of Pippa Lee.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you, Robin. Together. One over here, Robin.
Sorry?
Together, just taking the pictures together.
Together?
Yes.
Robin, Robin. Come on down there. The middle is better. Right here, on the side. On the right-hand side, everyone this way. There you go. And guys, look until we up down the line here, please. And over here. Folks smack there in the middle. Guys, one shift to the left. Robbie. I really appreciate you opening my line right here. One more, Robin, over your left shoulder. Robbie, back to your left. Robbie, to your left, please. Robbie, back to your left, please. Robbie, down here. Robbie, down here, please. Robin on the right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gents. Thank you so much. May we please move to the sides. Please remember not from the front rows and switch the flashes off. Thank you. Joanna.
Hi, welcome to the Toronto International Film Festival press conference for The Private Lives of Pippa Lee. Great movie about, written and directed by Rebecca Miller, based on her novel, about basically how we're all different people at different times in our lives, and in fact different people really even from day to day and moment to moment, I would say, and how hard it is to really know anybody. I'd like to introduce the people on the dais with me. Robin Wright Penn plays Pippa. Next to her is the writer-director Rebecca Miller, and to her right is Keanu Reeves, who plays Chris. Now, obviously, we're here to talk about the movie, but I'm sure at the top of everybody's mind is also the passing of Patrick Swayze. And so I'd like to ask you, Keanu, first, if that's okay, if you just have anything to say about it, and then we can concentrate on the film.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Swayze. He was a beautiful person, an artist, and I know our sympathies and condolences go out to his friends and family.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca, I'm interested in the genesis of this because you've lived with this project for so long. Can you talk a little bit about how it all started with you, and then also about the special challenges of adapting your own work?
Yeah. You know, really the germ of this book, which is how it all started, happened when I met up with a friend that I hadn't seen in years, and she had been a very wild young woman in New York City, and I met her again. I think it was maybe 20 years later, and she had become a placid mother of a couple of kids with and a husband. And I thought, what happened? And her whole personal style had changed. Now, underneath it all, you could still see it was her, but yet she had really radically changed. And I thought, how does that happen? How do you go from that to that, from A to B? And I started thinking about character and the malleability of character, and how much are we the same person from one point in our lives to the other? And I, in particular, was interested in the moral development of a person. I think as a person, at 50, Pippa looks back on herself at 21 and things that Pippa did that were fairly ruthless, but in a kind of innocent way almost, and yet she caused somebody a great harm, which is part of what the whole story is about. Mm-hmm. And so it was the idea of looking back at yourself as a younger person and thinking, I can't imagine doing that anymore. So are you the same person, or to what degree have we shifted? And it's sort of the Russian dolls one inside the other. So that was sort of the beginning of the search. And then when I came to adapt it, the biggest challenge was really that the structure was completely different. I had to restructure the whole thing take out some things. There's more in the novel that, you know, you have more information in the novel than in the film, because I didn't need it all.
Would you tell us a little bit, please, Robin, about why you were interested in doing this film?
I mean, it's such a rare opportunity to get a role like this, and I'd always been a fan of Rebecca's work, because lyrically she is like a poet without all that dead air. And fortunately, I had other people playing my life for me. So I got to sort of play, you know, what resonates inside. And that's attractive most of the time.
And Keanu, could you tell us also what attracted you to this?
Yeah, I was working with Rebecca Miller and working with Robin Wright and reading the book and the screenplay and playing Chris, which he's kind of this character that has about 3 or 4 different responsibilities in the piece, and I was looking forward to trying to achieve those. You know, I mean, he's kind of a friend. He's the weird neighbor guy. He's in a way, a lover. So I got to play 3 roles in one. So that was kind of exciting.
We'll take a question from the...
Hi, James Rocky, AMC.
yeah, could everybody just try to grab the mic before they ask the
Hi,
question?
James
Thanks.
Rocky, AMC TV. My question for Ms. Wright, Penn, and Mr. Reeves. When you're working with a director who's adapted her own novel for the screen, does it feel a bit intimidating to not have the wiggle room of arguing with your director and the writer about the ambiguity, or does it feel liberating because you're working with somebody who knows the material on such a molecular level?
You know, that's so funny because there were moments when I'd say, okay, maybe she wouldn't be, maybe, and Rebecca goes, oh, no, she is, actually. Okay? She just is. So you have to have that faith and trust in the visionary. And I did. I'm sure you did. And if you don't have that, you're fine.
Not to put too fine a
But
point on
having
it.
said that, I think one of the, I mean, like having said that, I do think that one of the nice things about, you know, for me about having written something and knowing it well is you can also know what to throw out, because, you know, let's face it, when you're making a film, it's a war against time and mediocrity. And, you know, a day is starting to end, you realize there's one scene that's going to have to go. And you know deeply which scene that is. You know what it can close over, and you can kind of make that scene work. And you know, or you can fold the lines of one scene into another scene quickly. And, you know, because in a way, all of the phases are parts of the writing. So, yeah, so I mean, I think there are advantages to it.
Keanu, did you want to take that? Or
Yeah, I came to the process with the novel and the screenplay, and I kept saying to you, "So, which one am I doing?" And then and you would go, "Well, do whatever you want." And then I would say, "But," and you kind of would give me what you were saying, sir, about the that idea of confinement and wiggle room. Kind of, it was kind of a particle in a wave with you. It was like you could be very specific, and then there were times where you would say, "Go ahead, do what you feel," which is great. I mean,
Well, because I didn't want, especially with Chris, like I wanted, well, with any character, but with that you would feel limited by, you know, the novel, but that you could just infuse him with yourself and not, you know, that it wouldn't get constraining. But yeah, I guess depends on the moment.
There's a question at the back.
Mila Kanev, Mix TV. Congratulations on your movie. It's really great. A question for Keanu. How did you like the transition from like action movies and like a different, like Matrix, to this kind of little bit softer, different sides? And as you said, 3 different roles in one. And would you like to continue doing this kind of roles?
Yeah, absolutely. you know, hopefully I'll get the opportunity to work in different genres and different kinds of scales of work, different, you know. So for me, it was a great experience, you know, to be working with such great artists and a story that I really responded to. And but it's nice to do some movie kung fu too. It's nice to run and jump and you know, hopefully just looking to entertain and to do work that's worthwhile.
Question up front, please.
I have a question for the actors. The title says the private lives, and you guys have to deal with that all the time, sharing with the public, you know, your own private life. So I was wondering how difficult it is to keep that private, so private, and what do you think about the people trying to know more about, you know, about your own private lives?
Well, I mean, I think we probably feel like how anybody would feel. You know, you just generally want, you know, to have your privacy and then, you know, the opportunity to do your work and to live your life. And I think any time where one isn't allowed to do that, it's frustrating, you know.
I can imagine. I mean, I don't work enough to not have, you know, a private life. I mean, I think that's what happens is if you expose too much, and you're on every magazine cover, you're doing every interview and every photo shoot and layout and it sort of diffuses the actor's talent, them as an actor, you know, in sort of solidarity. And all of a sudden, you're looking through that character with the person first. And I just think it's, you know, be healthily elusive is great. And I think naturally that happens when you just don't get jobs. You don't work very much.
Healthily elusive and unemployed. You have a question, please?
Hi, this is Linda from Fairchild TV of Toronto. Welcome to Toronto. After each film's production, actor, actress, or even the director will learn something all through the process. What is the only one thing, if you want to tell us and share with us the experience or things that you'd learned after you make this movie? Thank you.
Do you want to start?
Go ahead. Oh, you're not an actor. I know this is really... Whatever. I'll never be a porn actress. I know that for a fact. Seriously, that's what I learned. I was like, never again, never, never. It's just there's a wall. There's that boundary, and when you cross that boundary, you think you're being free and you're experiencing something tangential, and then you just go, okay, no, that was complete self-abuse. But
it was
it was great.
Beautiful.
It was great.
You did great. Yeah. What you want?
What did I learn?
What did you learn?
Well, I learned, you know, just working with you and working with you, Robin, was just was a great experience, and just a sense of, I don't know if it was learning, but to be kind of moving forward in you know, an artistic kind of creative environment, to kind of experience and not experiment, but to a certain kind of freedom and trust. And you know, it's working with Robin is pretty amazing. You know, she's a great actress, and I think it was an inspiration.
Wow, your check's in the mail.
I think also for me, just the individuals that I got to meet, just these people, these friendships, which, you know, it's hard to imagine that I didn't have these friendships and these connections before. And I really felt, you know, that it was a collaboration that was very special. And that really these people, one of the things Alan Arkin said, you know, was that
Rebecca.
after he said that, was, you know, that it was everyone was so present that he worked with. It was a group of people that were so present to each other and really listening to each other, and that it was truly an ensemble in that sense of people really listening to each other, and that to me is really what acting is. So it was such a great feeling to come on and have that happening all over the place.
This fellow up front, please.
Gary from Cena. This is for Keanu Reeves. Love your works, big fan.
Thank you very much.
And question is, you played a lot of different roles in your career, and you're into music. And how big a role that acting or filmmaking plays in your life?
Acting is my life. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, if I'm not working, I'm working on working. You know, developing scripts, trying to produce some films. It's pretty much all I do.
Question in the middle.
Hi, I'm Kate Stutzman with CHCH News. This question is for Robin and for Keanu. I mean, it's no secret that successful actors like yourselves do quite well financially with movies. Is that just a bonus? And in terms of acting, is it right now for yourselves considered a job or more like a passion?
Not on my movies. It's
Yeah,
not particularly rewarding.
I made $16.95 on this movie, wouldn't you? I don't think it distinguishes the passion to make money. You just can heat your pool. But the pressure's off in a weird way, because you're so catered to, and you fall into diva quickly. And when we basically shared a trailer, didn't we, Keanu? I mean, we had one couch and with a cardboard box in between. It was great because you're doing the work and not thinking about, well, what am I going to do in between the time the work takes place? You know, there's not all of that mind speak going on. You dive, you swim, you get out.
This gentleman here, please.
Mo Rajan, City TV. Keanu, I'm wondering what it feels like to come back to the city of Toronto in this capacity now. Do you feel ever like, I can't believe this is the same place? Do you have memories of this city? And what is it like to see one of the world's biggest festivals in, you know, in a place that you're very familiar with?
Yeah, it's great. It's I grew up around here, and yeah, it's always nice to come back. You know, I left when I was 20 years old, 1985. The city's changed a lot. I remember coming to this festival, what was it, 1984? So this festival has grown a lot. It's always been fantastic, and it's, yeah, I guess when you take a minute to reflect, there's always that, you know, you came from here and you're here now and coming back to the place. So it's a lot of good memories, and I feel lucky and fortunate to be able to make films and to act, and so it's great to be a part of this.
Lady at the back, please.
Hi, my name is Julie from Global News. This is for Keanu Reeves. Keanu, if we could go back to the passing of Patrick Swayze, if you can just tell us any anecdotes about working with him, any insight into his character, and what movies like Point Break or Dirty Dancing contribute to movie culture.
Well, I got to work with him on Point Break, and just his passion, his lust for life and his craft. You know, there were some skydiving sequences in this film that we did together, and you know, as filming was going along, you know, it came to be that Patrick was jumping out of airplanes all the time, and they eventually, I think he had over 30 jumps during the course of filming, and so the production served him with a cease and desist, which they listened to until they got to Hawaii, and then they kept jumping out of airplanes, and I think it was, you know, Patrick was just, you know, he wanted to experience life, you know, and he wanted to, for his work, he wanted to take the opportunity that the film gave him in that sense to, you know, in the film you see him jump out of an airplane and do some flips, you know, falling to the ground. And he did it with just open heart. You know, to me, he was very generous, and to everybody around him, you know, he was just, he just lit up a room, you know, and he had a really good sense of humor. And you know, I can just say from what I know of him, he lived life to the fullest.
Lady at the back, please.
Ms. Penn, could you please define specifically why you feel this is one of those rare good roles for women?
I think because it's every woman, maybe varying degrees of, but you know how we are all crazy, I know. How that emotional data starts to have issue with the choice that you made over here. And all of a sudden, all that fabric that you've woven, and it's so tight, and it just starts to unravel out of your control. And I mean, that happens post-40, right? I mean, that's kind of where you just start to you unwind. Unwind with truth. And I think that's pretty much everybody's story. But how does it manifest? That was the beauty of this role. You know, the sleepwalking and devouring sweets more than savory. Do we have savory stuff?
No, it was sweets.
It was sweets.
Oh, cheese. It was cheese.
Well, cheese, yeah.
And then the French fries later.
French fries, yeah. Savory, sweet, yeah. Need it all.
I wanted to ask you about your wardrobe. It must have been hilarious walking into the wardrobe the first day and seeing just acres of beige. Does she wear anything but beige?
That wonderful palette. That was like, ew. That's so ew. I know we talked about it a lot. Okay, she had all the ideas. She has this great designer who's worked with her a couple of times. And they had just hordes of clothes, they had it figured out. And I was like, okay, yes, matronly, I can feel it, cardigans, ew, ew, ew. The shoes. The minute I put my feet in whatever Ferragamo nastiness, that was it. I mean, it just created the walk, and all of a sudden your arms are next to your rib cage, and you're just, constantly putting hand cream on. It was the shoes.
Was it hard to find where you were in the story when you're playing somebody who's so reined in, so emotionally contained? Did you have like a mantra where you're going to a place in your mind to keep yourself so pulled in and contained? What was that like?
I kept asking Rebecca to keep me in check all the time because I'm very judgmental and I'm kind of a bitch a lot of the time. And so I was like, okay, I really don't want Pippa to be that. So I said, just unjudgmental hopefulness. That's the mantra.
And Keanu, you had an interesting little wardrobe, the tattoo. What was that like to be?
Yes, the old Jesus on the chest tattoo.
It took so long to find that.
We see that all the time. It was really tough just trying to come up with something different. Everyone's different. Yeah, it was quite a process to find the right Jesus.
And how long did you live with it? Were you in makeup every day, or did you get it once?
No, we had some great artisans who could apply it. It took the first time I think it was 4 hours, and then the second time was about 2.5, 3.
How long did it last? The whole
a couple
time?
of days, like a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then, it's this tattoo that's about this big.
Yeah.
Jesus kind of. Pardon me? Pardon me? Oh, I don't know.
This question here, please.
Question for Keanu Reeves.
Sir?
You've had a long, successful career, and I'm sure you have the opportunity now to choose and pick which roles you want to do. But when do you consider
is that what it seems like from the outside? Yeah.
But, what do you consider the most pivotal moment in your career where you did see like a turning point?
I've been pretty fortunate so far. That I've had a few of those. I think early days, even just starting out, I got an agent while I was doing playing Mercutio in a community center here in Toronto, to getting a chance to do River's Edge, to do Point Break was a real pivotal change. what I got a chance to do in the future. And, so those are a couple. Well, I was playing Mercutio, and someone saw my performance and asked me if I had an agent. I said no, and I had an agent. And I went from community theater to trying to be a professional. You know, I went to Los Angeles when I was 20 years old. Didn't work for a pretty long time, and I got to do a film with Tim Hunter and Crispin Glover and Frederick Elms as the DP, and Dennis Hopper, and got to do a great film, and that got me some other opportunities to work as a professional actor. Point Break, I got to do something that I don't think I would have been the first choice for, but Catherine Bigelow saw something, and I got to run and jump and fire some guns, and that changed my life as well.
Lady in the middle.
My name is Akemi. I'm from Japanese magazine Cut. This question is to Ms. Miller. Keanu once played a love interest of the Diane Keaton before. Was that reason for you to cast him? Also, to Keanu, how do you feel about being seen as a guy who can handle more experienced, beautiful women?
Well, you know what? I did see him in that movie, which I really loved him in, which was called
Something's Gotta
Give. But it was really looking at all his work, you know, back from my own Private Idaho, and looking at many of his movies and studying his work really carefully, that made me think, you know, I wanted to work with him, because casting is a huge decision. You know, I mean, there's no guarantee someone's going to say yes, but if they do say yes, that's it, you know, and it's like the die is cast, you know, and you're essentially giving something very precious to somebody and entrusting them with it. And so it was really a combination of all the facets that I saw in him, and in particular the kind of vulnerability that I think he has, and the real honesty that he can have. So that's why I cast him. Or asked him to do it, and then he said yes, and then he was cast.
No, we had to beg you. We begged you.
Yeah, we did have to beg him. But even Robin even begged.
No.
A little.
Oh, jeez. It took weeks.
Please do it. Did you have anything to add, Keanu, about your new role as romancer?
No, I don't.
There was a question here. Yeah.
Hi, Andrea Case, CTV News, Toronto. Robin Wright Penn just talked about the fabulous Ferragamo shoes. Can you talk a little bit about your look now, Keanu, personally? A lot of the ladies have been wondering before you came here today what you were going to look like, clean shaven or not. Just comfort, or what are you going for?
Thank you. But I'm afraid I can't answer that question until I speak to my people.
Right here in the middle, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Giovanna Tolganiuk. I'm with Abanico magazine. This question is for Robin. One of your answers was that after 40, women, we start discovering some of our truths and who we are. How are you dealing with this process, and what are you finding about yourself, and how are you rediscovering yourself?
I think the volume's just higher when you get older. Because you go, okay, I got how many years left? I better act on it, you know? I hope I answered your question.
Anybody else have a question at the moment? In the front, please.
The title says she lived many lives, and it's been so much on the public eye. Would you say that you guys live different lives, your own and the one you have on the screen? People have different perceptions from you guys? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah.
Rebecca, you've had lots of different, like, sort of literally different lives. You were an actress and a writer, a painter, a sculptor, director. I'm sure you brought all of that to bear on this. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just the different
Yeah,
things
well,
that feed
I mean,
you?
I started as a painter. that was what I studied, and I had written short stories already. Acting was for me a kind of opportunity that came out of nowhere in a strange way. I knew I wasn't really an actress, but I had enough ability just to squeak by and work with a few great directors, and that was essentially my film school for 5 years. I learned a huge amount about, how a crew works, how mutinies happen on film sets, how to work with actors. I got a better sense of how to do that. And, so I feel like, and then I feel that the painting and the acting, in a funny way, they did prepare me for the writing and directing, which I do now. They were my schooling and my base.
I think it's a really interesting notion, the idea that we can't nobody can really know anybody intimately.
Yeah.
That there are certain things that happen in this movie that come as a complete surprise to the people in them as well as the people watching them. And I wanted to know, was there a specific kind of idea or notion that really spoke to you that you really hoped that this movie conveys, or that was there a central image or idea that you sort of started with, but other than your friend that you mentioned?
Well, it's a mystery of character, and it's trying to delicately unpeel a woman, like an onion. And what do you get? How do you unpeel those layers? To me, that's fascinating. And I think everyone is curious. I think we're all naturally curious about each other. It's just part of being a human being. And so for me, what motivates me is my natural curiosity about characters. And I find Pippa, in her mysteriousness, in the fact that you feel like you can sort of judge her in the first scene, and you get her so wrong. And it's one of those things of so many people will surprise you. So many people have passed that you can't have predicted. And Pippa's one of those people, And as well, she has so many different fluctuating elements to her character that are like, the weather. And I just love tracing that and allowing myself the time to do that while at the same time keeping things entertaining.
Robin, a lot of actors talk about developing a backstory for their character, and you obviously didn't have to do that in this case. Your backstory was all kind of explicated. Does that change the way you work? And can you also talk a little bit about having a different actress play you in an earlier life? Did you and Blake Lively, who plays the young Pippa, did you have any kind of conversations about working out maybe how she moves or how she does this or that to make you contiguous as characters?
Yeah, that was, I took one physical trait of hers because I had literally just met her during the camera test. And so we didn't have any time to share history. What do you think? What's the through line? Let's have a conduit here to... And Rebecca said, look at what she's doing. She was in front of the camera. And she's such a little doe, Blake. And she would be asked a question.
Yeah.
And every time, just that beautiful innocence, that 20-year-old thing. And she would always go like this, huh? What? She would always look at, and it was always with her eyes and her forehead. And you said, just take that. Because we both had squinty eye smiles, the same. And I don't know why, something as simple as that allowed me to just go into...
Yeah.
That lightness and freshness, even though Pippa has seen it all, done it all, slept with everything. You know what I mean? Popped every pill. And still, all of the dark and the light was new to her. Every second of it. Everything was, it hit her emotionally. She wasn't tainted by it.
Yeah. And one of the things Alan says, Alan Arkin's character, Herb, says in the movie to the young Pippa, he says, you have such a sweetness about you. And she says, I'm not sweet. And he says, you can be experienced and have a sweetness about you. And that's Pippa.
There's a question in the middle, this gentleman.
Hello, Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico for Keanu Reeves. You were talking about the time when you started in the film industry. I would like to know which do you consider is the main difference between the film industry right now and the film industry when you started, and if it's easier or harder for the new generations to work and get into the...
I'm sorry, could you repeat the end of the question?
You were starting about when you started as an actor. I would like to know which do you consider is the main difference in the film industry when you started and right now for the new generations, or is it easier to work or to get into the Hollywood mainstream, something like that?
When I first started out, I guess there was a little more kind of rock and roll feel, a little more carnival, gypsy kind of quality to how sets would feel. Like when you would go to work, a simple thing would be wrap beer. You know, at the end of filming, you know, the coolers would come out and people could have beer and kind of hang out. And people would visit, and now it feels. This is not true all of the time, but the kind of overall view of it feels much more kind of, you know, at least on the set and in public, much more kind of.
Corporate.
Is it corporate? I don't know if it's corporate, but it's less than. It seems more kind of, and it's. Don't get me wrong. It's still a lot of fun, and people still have a rap beer. It's just not, you know, out there. And corporate, and what else? I don't know. I mean, right now that seems to be there's a lot going on in terms of the how films are being made, how films are being bought, how films are being sold, but we're still making films, we're still making movies, and you know, I think as the industry is always evolving and changing, you know, one thing stops, but another opportunity begins, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of mid-level production, a lot of mid-level films, independent films. You know, there's still money out there, equity-wise, but it's still how do you get, who's going to buy the film? I think here people have been speaking about distribution. Everyone's kind of waiting and seeing when do we buy the film? What are the rates? What's going on? And then the majors are doing a different kind of level. You know, the kind of mid-level. Some of the films that I did in the past, you know, 40 million. You know, like The Lake House, that wouldn't get made by a major anymore, really. So there seems to be, but that gap is being filled in by other opportunities. What else? Is that it?
The lady toward the back. Thanks.
From Hello. My question's for Rebecca. When you've written a story and then directed the story, and Pippa's been such an all-consuming part of your life for so long, are you a bit daunted about now putting her out there and somewhat having to leave her behind? Like, are you nervous about moving on from her?
Well, it is strange to have it be such a big part of my life for so long, for years, you know, for over 5 years, and move on, and yet I need to move on, you know, because it's, as a story, it consumed so much of me. But I feel now that Pippa, in both manifestations, as a book, as a film, as Robin's Pippa, so much a part of me that I think of her as a person now that, you know, needs to have her own destiny, and it will be strange to move on, but also liberating and right to get, you know, to tell another story. Yeah.
Again, I know that you like music very much. I would like to know what kind of music are you listening right now, and if you look for new bands on MySpace or these new websites that give us a lot of variety in music.
Yes, there are. I haven't really been listening to much music recently. In terms of, you know, what are the sites and different ways to see, you know, to listen to music over the internet and such. I mean, I know that there are a lot of, you know, my friends have, you know, there's a myriad of them, but I haven't really, I'm not the person to ask about that. I think there's hipper and cooler people for that than me.
Rebecca, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the production design. I thought it was an interesting choice to have them have cleared out their place. Pippa mentioned several times, it's so nice to live with nothing. And then there's the great contrast with the neighbor's house in the room that Chris lives in with the little hats hanging on the wall and everything, which makes for the most hysterical love scene backdrop I've ever seen, I think. Can you talk a little bit about your choices there?
Yeah, well, the design was really important partly because there are so many different worlds within the film, and we needed to kind of create a color palette where each world has its own, but at the same time they echo each other. I wanted the contemporary one, which is what you're talking about in the development, to be almost like a blank canvas, that you could see these people in front of the blank walls, and almost to be almost like a palette cleanser, because the past is so dense. You know, the past, the Suki and the 60s and into the 70s, and young Pippa, the Blake Lively part, is filled with bric-a-brac and little signals all over the place. And then you come back, and there's Pippa in this wearing beige in this kind of completely clear place. And then you go back to the 80s and all of the color and all of the, you know, the brashness of the 80s, and then you come back. And so it's kind of like trying to also create a kind of way that the movie breathes between tones, which is one of the things that, you know, the film does.
We'll take one last question, thanks.
Sorry, you were just talking about like living with the character for 5 years and now kind of putting it to bed, and I just wanted to ask the actors, are there any characters you'd like to revisit? Like, will you ever do another Bill and Ted's movie, or will you ever return to something like The Princess Bride?
I'm too old to return. I mean, you can't, right? Well, we're doing the sequel to Pippa. That's right. That's open for a sequel.
Yeah, she's got a couple more lives, I'm sure. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everybody.
I'd like to play Constantine again. How about that?
Thank you. And Robin. Come on, buddy. We'll do it together. We've got the 3 hours. Right in the middle, guys. Right in the middle. He's making his way. Thank you, sir. Both of you to your right, please. Thanks, Robin. Thank you.